Genie, how many wishes do I still have?
As far as I can see, you still have 2. Since you could not formulate a question that was sensible on the variety of a meaning of life, I did not count that. However, you said my answer to the question, what should I do, counted as an answer, so I am counting that as an answered wish. So yes, 2 left.
Okay, I think I have my second wish.
Alright, let's hear it.
I wish to know what enlightenment is. I thought it had all figured out, and now I'm confused again. A friend of mine tried to explain it to me, but I'm afraid he may have gotten enlightened in the process. He says that has a tendency to happen.
Alright, I can try to answer that. I must warn you though, that this will be a very unenlightening explanation of enlightenment. I have never been enlightened, nor do I intend to ever be enlightened. I have too many things that I have to do. Of course, since this is an explanation of enlightenment only from the most unenlightened, the explanation is completely outside of the first person. But you should ultimately realize this to be a good thing, because since I am unenlightened and able to talk about it, I can avoid all those contradictions which glorify the whole thing in their ambiguous and mysterious nature. Really, it's really not that mysterious of a notion when looked at objectively.
Finally, someone who can explain it to me, free of contradictions. I am very excited to hear this explanation.
First, you have to grasp the idea that the mind constantly turns multiplicities into unities, and we must recognize the mind's ability to find the number 1 in nature. You see, if we try hard enough, everything can be broken into multiplicities. You can say, there is a cloud, and I can respond, there's no cloud, there are only millions of water molecules scattered in the sky. After that, I can divide even more and say, there are no atoms, only subatomic particles, and after that, there are no subatomic particles, only quantum waves and such. But no matter where we draw the line in our divisions, we create unities in the world. Patterns among multiple things are recognized, and then those multiple things turn into singular things with which we then operate.
But how does any of this relate to enlightenment?
I'm getting there. So, when we relate into the world, we operate on a certain level of relation, a level at which certain things are merged and certain things distinct. I could look at you, this lump of matter in front of me, and depending on my level of relation you could be many different things. You could be a swarm of subatomic particles which can be causally explained according to the laws of particle physics. You could be a conglomerate of neurons which can be explained according to the laws of neurobiology. You could be a clump of beliefs, desires, and intentions which can be explained according to some laws of psychology, or you could all be clumped all together to the person level, and an explanation would simply be in terms of you as a causal agent.
So the highest level on which you can relate to me is on this person level?
Oh, not all. The levels go higher and higher, but then they will be larger than you, and so you are included in my explanation of the world, but only as part of a higher level doer.
A doer.
Anything which goes actively through the world, all of these things which I phrase my explanation in terms of are doers. So yes, if I am on a sociological or political level of relation, you are accounted for, but not as you in the same way that your neurons are accounted for in an explanation in terms of intentions and desires.
So what is the highest level of relation?
That's just where I was going. First of all, by calling it highest, you must remember that it is not better than the other levels. It simply means that there is the most unity among us in the world. As the levels get higher, it means that there are fewer divisions which categorize the world into separate things. As for the highest level, you will find different names for it across cultures, but for our present purposes we can stick with, though I am not a huge fan of the term, enlightenment. This is the level of relation when all things are merged into one. There are no more splits between things in the world, there is just this great oneness of everything.
Is this oneness a doer?
It can be. Doers need a medium through which they do things, and since there is only one thing, there cannot be a separate doer and medium. Accordingly, there are no active causal explanations in this level of relation. There is just the immediate, purely passive presence of it.
This seems rather simple. Why does everyone have such a difficulty explaining what it is?
Good question. Suppose I took out my guitar right now and starting playing some blues scales. You don't have to know all the notes or the steps between the notes in order to say what I'm playing is bluesy. Bluesy is the level on which you relate to my notes. You can compare this label to other labels of the same level of relation such as jazzy, dancey, grungy and rocky. But with enlightenment, there can be nothing there is to compare it to because this is the only thing that can exist on that level of relation.
So that is why no one can explain it easily, because they don't have anything on the same level they can compare it to?
That's not even the worst problem with trying to explain it. In order to explain something, I must take it as an object for me, an object at which I stand at a distance from and observe. But I can never stand at a distance to it and still be in that level, because then the world is broken up into the categories of me and it, and enlightenment loses its essential unity. In the same way, any words used to describe it cannot do it justice because words, by their very nature, split things into categories. Any attempt to explain it while one is in the level of relation is futile.
And you can get around these problems.
Well, these problems are only secondary to a larger and problem of explanation that applies not only to enlightenment but to all levels of explanation. Something cannot be explained or defined on the level or relation that it exists. If it were, it would be contradiction or a tautology. Suppose someone asked me to define what you are, and I was already relating to the world on the level at which you are defined. I would say something like, you are the combination of your intentions, qualities, beliefs and desires. But this would be a horrible contradiction because if your intentions, qualities, beliefs and desires are owned by you, then you can't be any of them. My other possible definition would be, you are you. This would not be a contradiction, but it is a useless tautological statement, although I could see it appearing in some sort of inspirational calendar. These are the problems that arise when trying to explain enlightenment from that level of relation that arise with any level.
So how do you get around these problems?
Because I know how to explain and define things without falling into contradiction. When Louis Armstrong was asked what jazz was, he answered, if you have to ask, you'll never know. Now this sounds very nice, and probably inspired many musicians, but Louis is not thinking straight. He's on the level of relation at which jazz is defined, and so to define something which is an indivisible aspect of existence is impossible. But definitions cannot be on the level of relation at which they are defined. At that level they are to be used in a definition instead, to get to a higher level of relation. Of course I could give a definition of jazz. It is the style of music that emerges out of certain notes, certain rhythms and certain characteristics such as improvisation. In the same way, I could give a definition of enlightenment as the level of relation in which the entirety of one's existence is merged into unity.
Wow, all of that was very helpful.
Glad to be of service.
Wait, is that it?
Yup, that's all I have to say.
No witty ending to this dialogue segment.
No, I think I've covered everything I need to cover.